Over the next 2 episodes, we're going to talk about 2 different sides of the same problem, or perhaps more accurately, 2 different sides of the same solution. If you grew up in the West, chances are you never had to think about landmines. They weren't a problem when you played in the forest or ran through a field. They weren't always in the back of your mind. But of course there's places on Earth where that is a problem that are still covered in landmines, like here, just an hour outside of the tourism capital of Siem Reap. Today's video is about penance. It's the story of a child soldier conscripted into 3 different armies and forced to lay landmines against his will. He had to watch as they not only ripped away his childhood, but the next generations as well. And to his great credit, he didn't just lie down and take it. He found a way to use those same landmines to give children a better future. A minefield is kind of like a prison. Even when you're not in one, you carry it with you, because once you know that a mine could be behind any tree in any tall grass, how do you forget that? How do you go on a walk again with your dog, with your child? A decade ago, Cambodia had more landmines than people. It went through 3 wars back to back, or from another perspective, existed in a state of war for almost 30 years straight. About 100 people here step on a landmine every year. Up to 6 million remain on the soil today. And they aren't all in one place, on one border, from one time. They were placed as much for internal conflict as external over decades. Most of the records, if they ever existed, have been lost. Mines still dot this landscape, and nobody knows exactly where. Think about how that would mess with your mind. Dealing with landmines is more than just digging them out of the ground. They last longer in your memory than they do in the earth. You can't escape them. Like I said, they're a prison. Even standing here, knowing that the mines are all supposed to be somewhere else, it's impossible for me not to start to fear the land around me. All of a sudden, they're real. So let's look at one of the men who laid those mines. In understanding his story, it's much easier to see deeper into the psychological trauma that the last 40 years of Cambodia's history have had on its population. His name is Akira. Well, actually, that's not his real name, it's just a pseudonym. He was conscripted as a 10-year-old into an army he didn't want to fight in. But that army lost, and the army that beat it decided to take him into their ranks as well, again against his will. When they too disbanded, a 3rd army picked him up. By the time he was old enough to drink legally, he'd fought for 3 armies and laid hundreds, if not thousands, of mines. He'd fought for Pol Pot, for Vietnam, and for Cambodia, and somewhere along the line he got the nickname based on how often he cried. He calls himself Akira to forget that nickname, to forget all of it. But when the war is over, the child soldier grows up, and forgetting is easier said than done. After all, what skills do they have? Akira's greatest skill was that he understood landmines. He'd been laying them his whole life. It's not exactly commerce-friendly, though. But in that skill, he saw the opportunity to do something great, to pay back his community, to pay back himself for what he'd been forced to do. Quietly, alone, Akira went out into the forest and just started demining his country. Against the will of his government, against his own safety, and with no money, he just started demining. The mines he found he brought home, and soon they began to litter his house. It wasn't long before hundreds were strewn about his property. Tourists heard about him and his odd collection and came by in the hopes of seeing them. They offered $1 to come in. It was horror tourism at its finest. Akira took their money, but he didn't spend it on himself. He began using the funds to help local children who'd been injured. The mines had been killing or maiming hundreds every year, and slowly but surely, he would become their champion. Within a few years, he'd gone from laying mines with other child soldiers to using those mines to give children a better future, an incredible penance done completely by himself. It wasn't that much longer before powerful people began to notice, for better and worse. The government didn't want him demining, especially with no equipment, and certainly didn't appreciate him letting tourists know about the country's problems, so they tried to shut him down. But some Americans had taken note as well, and in their own form of penance decided to help him continue what he started. They created an NGO, fundraised a few $1,000s, and began what is today the Landmine Museum just outside of Siem Reap. Out back, they built an orphanage, providing underprivileged children an education straight through to university. The organization is now run by a man named Bill Morse, and together with Akira, they've created an environment where children who would otherwise be lost to poverty are thriving. But I'd prefer he explain it. Take it away, Bill.
My name is Bill Morse. I run a charity out of the United States called the Landmine Relief Fund. I work here in Cambodia helping raise money to clear landmines, and I work at the Landmine Museum. In the beginning, Akira was collecting landmines, and while he cleared landmines, he found a lot of wounded and orphaned children living in the countryside who were abandoned, orphaned, alone, all of them landmine victims, and he brought them home to his house, and he and his wife cared for them in the museum itself. In the facility we have today, we have no landmine victims any longer. The last landmine victim left the museum about 5 years ago. We have gone from thousands of landmine injuries every year in Cambodia to 87 landmine injuries in 2016. Still one every 4 days, but infinitely better than it was. The children who live at the center today, many of them were polio victims, a big problem in the 90s. Our last polio victim left the Landmine Museum last year. We have children who were handicapped. We have children who were abandoned. We have a couple of orphan children, and we have a lot of children who come from villages that have no access to primary education. So they would come and live here, and they go to public school. When they're not in public school, there is a teaching staff on site, a small school building. We have an English language program, a computer lab, a library, an art room, a playground, a farm. And when the children finish high school, they're given a university or trade school scholarship. We built 20 schools in rural Cambodia. We find a village that does not have a school and will not get one from the government for some time, and we make a contract with the village. They have to put up the land. They have to bring in the dirt to raise it above floodplain, and they have to petition the government to bring the school into the government system, and then we give them the material to build a school. We have a woman who's a building contractor. She comes in, we hire the locals to build the school, and then we provide the school supplies for it. You can't build a school, give it to a village, and walk away. If the villagers had the money to run a school, they would have had the money to build it. So we provide school supplies for nearly 3,000 children right now. When we built the museum here, we bought a hectare of land. The very front of the hectare of land, we put the museum. And where the children live in back is closed to tourists. Tourists are not allowed to go back and play with the children, take pictures of the children, watch them in school. We try to explain to the tourists that this is the children's home. I sometimes make the analogy of at home, if a busload of tourists showed up at your house in Texas or Toronto and wanted to come in and watch your kids get dressed and get ready for school, you call the cops. Yeah. Our budget is what we raise. You want to know what my budget's going to be? Tell me how much money I'll raise next year. But ideally, it's $400,000 to $500,000. We raise most of our money over PayPal. So we have a donation site at our website. You can click on that. If you want to have your bank transfer money directly to our bank account, we can also do that. If you're an American, we're a 501c3 charity, so you get a tax break on that. We partner with a charity in England so that you can donate through Virgin Money Giving. The British government does it a bit differently. If you donate money, they match 25% of it. We are not set up yet to work in Canada, but we hope to be set up very soon so that you can give money through the Canadian Landmine Foundation, and they are a tax-free charity in Canada. Landmines are not the responsibility of the Cambodian government. They're not the responsibility of the Canadian government, the American government, or the Russian and Chinese government. The responsibility for clearing landmines is yours and mine. Every time we say another country should be doing something different, we're saying, I don't care. We cleared 95 million landmines in Europe in 6 years at the end of World War II. This is not a technology problem. This is a commitment problem.
I can't help but think back to Akira's nickname, the boy who cries, a childhood so awful that it not only drove him to tears, but then mocked him for shedding them. Just a few years later, and that boy's not crying anymore. He's a man now, rooting out the horrors of his past and creating a future that he can live with. Landmines may be a prison, but there are ways to lower that sentence. That former child soldier is finding a way to make a better future with the very weapons he was forced to use. His museum is an example to show that landmines can save lives. You just need to know how to use them. This is Rare Earth.